Hi, and welcome back to the Vixen Voice. I'm April Roberts. Today, I thought I'd chat about what is the Vixen Gathering. And the reason I thought I'd share this is because I get that question all the time. So if you're listening and you've been curious, today is great for you. But even if you're not curious about what the Vixen Gathering is, hang in there because I'm going to talk about lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur for now 15 years. I also grew up the child of entrepreneurs. Back then we called ourselves business owners, and the grandchild of two entrepreneurs. So it's kind of baked in my blood. And, I love to share stories that I learned from my grandfathers, my parents, and also the amazing women that I find myself surrounded with at the Vixen Gathering. Both my team who inspire me every day and absolutely our clients and all the guests that you've heard here on the Vixen Voice. I mean, they're really just phenomenal women living courageously with confidence and seeking clarity on who they are and what they do. So I thought I'd share a little bit more about the Vixen Gathering today, and we'll kind of weave in these stories at the same time. So the Vixen Gathering, really for me around 2017, I started getting the pull to do something different. I had been in my financial practice. I started in 2008. I joke, but it was for real, that I was my dad's intern. So that was really fun, starting my third career as an intern to my dad. And that actually started July of 2008. And then I moved to Houston in 2010 and opened my own businesses. So, I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years now, and I absolutely love it. I would never trade it to go work for someone else or do something else. But what I can tell you is, as Darren Hardy says, the entrepreneurial roller coaster is real. And I think the more that you share the reality of being an entrepreneur, a business owner, a solopreneur, a mommy mogul, whatever it is that you call yourself, I love it. I would actually, if you're watching this, if you want to go to YouTube, there's a short version. Just look for the What is Vixen Gathering video. I'd love for you to share in the comments, what do you call yourself? Or find us at Vixen Gathering on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. How do you describe what you do? Because it's really interesting. I found that some people are very unique with this. Some people are a little shy about it. So I'd really love to hear from you. What do you call yourself? I think at this point I call myself an entrepreneur. This is now my third business on my own. And, as I said, I've been doing it for over 15 years, but I'm getting kind of tired of the term entrepreneur. So if you have a cooler term I should be using, share it with me. I'd love to hear it. So, as I said, I kind of grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad had his own CPA firm as I was growing up, and then he sold that and went to take over my grandfather's dry cleaning business because he was just a little bit burnt out, I think. I can relate. I just changed careers. And so he took over my grandfather's dry cleaning business, and my mom was always right by his side, helping him run each of these businesses. She was kind of the unsung hero of everything we did. And both my grandfathers, my one grandfather, my mother's father, as I said, had a dry cleaners, but I swear he had at least 14 businesses leading up to the dry cleaners. In fact, he had a nightclub that my mom worked at in high school serving drinks. So I'm not sure how that worked, but it was Mississippi back in the 1960s. So I think kind of things just, you got away with what you got away with, right? So anyway, my grandfather had a dry cleaners, which is the business I knew and grew up working in. And my other grandfather was super consistent. He was a paint contractor all of his life, and he had a paint contracting company that he passed on to my uncle. And so what's amazing about that is my papa Paul, who owned that business, he had a sixth grade education. He had to leave school in the sixth grade to go help his family on their farm. And he didn't even know how to read fully. And what happened was he went and joined the army because, there were a lot of wars going on back then, or he was probably forced to join the army. And when he was in the army, he chose to go to night classes that they offered to teach himself how to read. And my grandfather always shared with me the story about remembering them coming to take his Schwinn bicycle. It basically got repossessed when he was in the 6th grade and had just left school. And so he was very driven to provide for his family, to make sure there was food on the table, and to show up and give value to his clients. So I learned a ton of lessons from my grandfather about how to deal with clients. And, my grandfather, when he passed away, left my step grandmother, who was my real grandmother, $1 million+. So he did pretty well for himself. So I started learning my entrepreneurial lessons from my Papa Joe. He owned the dry cleaners, and I'll never forget what we would do is our dry cleaners served Keesler Air Force Base, which before Hurricane Katrina was the #1 training facility for the United States Air Force in all of the country. So most men and women there were students, and what happened is on Mondays they had to show up looking perfect for their inspections. So our dry cleaners was open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, from 6 to 6 on Saturday, and from noon to 6 on Sunday. And my grandmother knew that no one wanted to work Sunday. He wanted to give, his employees a break on Sunday. So he always worked 12 to 6. And what would happen is I would go to Sunday Mass with my grandparents, the 10 a.m. Mass. We would go have quick lunch at my parents' house, and my grandfather would jet off to the cleaners. And I'll never forget one Sunday, I was 12 years old. I can still picture what I was wearing. And my grandfather just kind of slapped the table and he said, "April Rochelle Roberts, it's time for you to go to work." And I don't know about you, but I'm the oldest of 3 children. And, it was just a time where you kind of did what you were told. And so I wasn't super excited about spending my Sunday at the dry cleaners. But on the other hand, I was flattered that my grandfather wanted me there, and I was curious about what happened. So we went off that Sunday, and pretty much every Sunday I spent with him at the cleaners from 12 to 6. Now, we weren't really busy. A lot of the Air Force was picking up their uniforms for Monday, and so I usually was doing homework, to be honest. But it was really interesting having that consistency of showing up with my grandfather. And that summer, of course, he decided when I was off school that I could work a couple of more days during the summer. So I worked in our dry cleaners from age 12 all the way through law school whenever I was home. And when I got into high school, my grandfather had this fantastic idea that I needed to work 6 days a week during the summer. So when I was home, I got to be an exchange student to Germany and different things because I worked half the summer. And, so my parents would pay for my plane ticket and get me there, and I would have spending money for these cool things I got to do. So that taught me at a very young age that working and making my own money gave me freedom, because I got to do a lot of things that my friends didn't do. Now, a lot of friends would tease me and call me spoiled because I got to do these things. What they didn't realize was I was working 15 hours at the dry cleaners for half the summer so that I could go do this cool stuff the other half of the summer and afford to do it. So that was my first experience with working. What I would love is, again, go to YouTube. You can find this short video. I'd love to hear your first memory of working. What was your experience? What made you, the beautiful, amazing woman you are today, the awesome entrepreneur, mompreneur, whatever it is you call yourself? I'd really love to hear your reflections on how you got to where you are and what your earliest memory was. One thing I can share with you, and it's so funny because my grandfather, we called him General Joe, because, around the cleaners, he was the general. Sometimes he had to put up with people's attitudes. Anyway, I'll never forget to this day, and I'm 47 years old sitting here. One of my most proud moments was when I was 17 or 18. I remember walking into the cleaners, and my grandfather was at the generation, very do it yourself, don't depend on anyone, don't ask anyone for anything. In fact, in our dry cleaners, the racks that held clothes and the system that brought the clothes forward, he built all of that. He did not bring a contractor in. He had been a contractor. So he pretty much built out the infrastructure of our dry cleaners before opening it. And I say ours, my family took it over. Of course, it was very much my grandfather's at that point. But I remember walking in one day, and I'm 17 or 18, it's summertime, and my grandfather had messed something up, and I remember hearing him tell Vera, who was at the front counter, oh gosh, like he was kind of cursing and, not happy about what he did. And he didn't know I'd walked in yet. And I overheard him say, well, April will be here soon. She runs this place anyway. And I'll probably get emotional as I say that because it was such a compliment and such a confidence booster coming from my grandfather. And the funniest thing is, I don't know that he would have said it to my face. So, I love to take this moment and reflect and just think, who can we share compliments in our life? Who do we admire that we don't tell them? Because it really can change their life forever. So anyway, I don't want to get too long. I can get very reminiscent about those days. I actually absolutely loved working in the dry cleaners. I worked every position in there. It was just an amazing way. I always thank my grandfather for my work ethic because that's where it came from. And I always like to thank my parents for teaching me unconditional love. So again, we'd always love to hear from you. When you look back, who taught you things? Who helped make you the person you are today, right? And give yourself credit in this because many of us carved our own journeys today. So anyway, that was my beginning, memories of entrepreneurialism. And again, back then we just said we owned businesses or we were business owners. This term entrepreneur wasn't really big in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. And so for me, it's kind of like I just understood you worked, you created things, you earned money, and that's how you got to live your life. And then, of course, I went to college and I went to law school. Coming out of law school, I went to work for a huge firm, the largest firm in Atlanta, Georgia at that time. They are now a huge international force. And, that was an amazing experience for many reasons. The people I got to meet, the intellectual stimulation, kind of just learning how the world worked at a very early age, seeing behind the corporate veil at age 25 when I started working. So that was super valuable, but at some point I realized it wasn't for me always. And I think it's because I was conditioned that my family did their own thing, right? And while it was an amazing, awesome experience, and I continued being a lawyer for a number of years working for other people, I always knew something was missing for me. And, as you reflect back, I bet you remember a time where you felt the same, or maybe sitting here today, you feel exactly that way. And this is exactly why I founded the Vixen Gathering. I kind of joke that entrepreneurialism is baked into my blood. And again, in 2008, I started with my dad in Robert's Wealth as his intern, and I was in charge of marketing, appointment setting, client service, doing the paperwork, basically everything except for consulting the clients, which was my dad's job. And of course, I sat in on those meetings and took all the notes, reminded him of everything. So I really did everything. And by the way, if you are starting a business or you have a new business, I highly recommend you do the same thing. I know a lot of times solopreneurs, there's a lot of pressure to hire and have people help you, and I 100% believe in that. I love convincing my clients who are solopreneurs to leverage their time with smart hires. However, I also think it's critically important that you know how every part of your business works as you are building it, because it's your baby. And I just learned this hard lesson with Vixen. We hired out marketing, we hired out some advertising, and it was a flop and it cost me a lot of money because I didn't understand what they were supposed to be doing for me, right? It'd been a long time since I'd done marketing in my other firm. I got to a point where we were hiring out and we had people in house. And so we let that agency go, and my team and I took all of this back in house, and we had to start from scratch learning everything. But, the amazing thing is we launched it all, we figured it out. Of course, we're probably going to hire people again, but this time around, we know what we're doing. We know how to hold the outside firm accountable, and we know what results we want. I also think an important thing when you're a solopreneur or business owner is that your business authentically reflects who you are. And I've talked to so many of my clients that kind of stopped working with their social media manager or their marketing team because they didn't feel that enough of them was being infused in. I love this idea. Brendan Burchard talks about mastery versus mimicry. So mimicry is doing what everyone else is doing and succeeding. Mastery is figuring out your own way to do it. I think at the beginning you need a combo of both because you kind of want to do some things that are working, right? Otherwise it's going to cost you a lot of money or you're not going to make any money. But over time, the goal should be to evolve to mastery. So I've taken us way off course with the topic, but that was something that recently happened with us, and I just kind of thought I would share a failure that we had. I call it tuition, all that money. So how much better if you can learn from my tuition instead of your own? So just thought I'd share that. But if we, go back to 2017, I really started getting called to do something else and make impact in a different way. And this was very difficult for me because I'm sure as many of you feel, especially we women, we tend to have purpose-driven businesses where we really want to help people. And I had a ton of financial clients, hundreds by this point, that depended on me leading a team to give them financial security. That's a huge responsibility, a huge promise that I did not take lightly. And so you can imagine, how I felt torn when I started getting the inklings that I should be doing something else. And again, I'm sharing this story because I'm sure if you're listening, you've either felt this way at some point or you might be feeling that way right now. And I just want you to know it's okay. Explore and listen. So if you know about my life at all, which I'm not going to assume at this point, but if you've heard me chat, I've had some hard lessons in life through my marriage, moving to Italy, my ex-husband's addiction, etc. And one thing I have learned is I believe that God whispers to us. You may call God the universe, the greater good, whatever you believe in. Most of us believe in something higher than us, right? And for me, I call that greater good God. And so in my experience, God will whisper to you and he'll show you things. And if you continue to ignore, he kind of knocks you upside the head, right? And every time I say this to someone, they laugh because we've all experienced it. So again, I heard the whisperings in 2017. I kind of had this vision of the future. That vision crept back up in 2019 in a totally different place and a totally different way. And so I was like, oh, okay, let me start listing. Okay, well, I'm going to figure out, how I keep my financial practice and explore this new calling. And then April of 2020, I was reading a book, and the vision I had in my head, the author of the book had the exact same vision. And, let's remember April of 2020, the world's falling apart. We're all locked away. If you're a business owner at that time, like me, you know how absolutely challenging it was. And for those of us who are true entrepreneurs, we rose to the challenge, but it was constant change every day, right? And on top of that, I was a financial advisor and our economy was in shambles. Now, we'd set our clients up well, but I spent all day telling my clients, hey, you're going to be okay. Look, this is what's going on. Whereas what I really loved about being a financial advisor was instilling abundance mentality in them and empowering them to own their future and own their finance and own their spending, right? And 2020 kind of wiped that out and I had to rebuild. So again, it's really important to me to be building something, to grow something, to be moving the ball forward. And I think if you're listening and you own a business, you feel the same way. That's why you're doing it. So I had this calling in 2020 again, and I remember just looking up and saying, really, right now, you want me to do this? But I knew it was the third clear vision of this future. And I knew that if I didn't start taking action, that board to the head was coming soon. And I didn't want to experience it again. And I think so many of us had similar moments in 2020, right? Whether it was a relationship we're in, our business, how we were living our life, how we were taking care of our health, we just had that aha moment. And so I didn't know how I was moving forward with this vision, what I was doing. And so I did something that was new for me. I'm a very self-directed person. If you know the print assessment, I'm an 8-7, which means very self-directed and driven. And 7 is loves to enjoy life. So I basically have two modes. I'm either driving, building, growing, or I'm enjoying the people around me. I'm enjoying life. I'm having fun. So the cool thing about Vixen is I can merge these two things. That's why I love it. But going back to 2020, I was like, really right now? Okay, let me figure this out. So being self-directed, I was not very good at asking for help. And my philosophy has always been to give value. Like I'm very driven to give and give value. And so a lot of times I feed so much into relationships that then if I do need something and I ask, they don't think twice. And I don't do this on purpose. It's just how I'm built. So I suddenly found myself where I needed to ask people for things that I wasn't sure how much value I'd given them. And for me, that was very difficult, but I kind of knew it was the third sign and I didn't have a choice. And so I just started asking and it led to this beautiful experience the rest of 2020. I ended up hopping on Zoom calls with a number of other female business owners, female entrepreneurs, women in transition in their life. This is just where the journey took me. And I said, okay, I'm going to work with women. This is what we're doing. And then later it came to me that I wanted to work with them to help them through the transition and the changes of 2020 because I thrive on change. And I'd had so much change and experience in my life being an entrepreneur, moving to Italy, getting married, all these different things that I kind of change is not that difficult for me. I don't know how to say it much better than that. So I thought, wow, everyone's going through so much change. They're challenged by it. How can I show up and serve others, serve other women, and help them through this change? And then the next thing I realized was a lot of women were leaving their job, staying home, or they were starting a business. There was a lot of transition in the business world for women. So it became clear to me that I wanted to set up a new company to coach and mentor female entrepreneurs and women in transition. And thus the Vixen Gathering was born. So yes, the Vixen Gathering, we're being a little cheeky with the name. I personally don't like it when people take themselves too seriously. Now we've all been there, done that. But I think life should be fun and we should take ourselves lightly and just figure out how we can love and show up and serve people. So that was one purpose for the Vixen Gathering. Also, the Vixen is a female fox, and it is the one species where the female is more attractive and attracts in the male. So I thought that was pretty interesting, plus the qualities of vixens. And then, of course, we wanted a big gathering where we female entrepreneurs came together. I work with clients in a number of ways. Some people really like one-to-one coaching. Some people like small groups. And then my kind of favorite way is the Vixen Mastermind, which is a combination of these two plus a quarterly retreat. So over time, the Vixen Gathering has developed into that. In the future, we hope to have a big networking group where we can just all come together and gather. But it's really a place where you can be yourself. Our number one rule at the Vixen Gathering is never apologize. It is not a place where you have to apologize for who you are. We want you to show up authentically, really, with your challenges, your wins, everything that you want to share. So that's super important at the Vixen Gathering. And wow, I can't believe this has been 24 minutes. So if you're still hanging in there, thanks for hanging in. So if we fast forward to now, what I realized is because of the entrepreneurial roller coaster, a lot of my clients were hiring me for business coaching and consulting because, of course, I was an entrepreneur for 15 years. I successfully sold a company, ran it, and we brought in multiple millions per year of revenue, then was able to successfully exit that. And I was fairly well known in the financial industry among female financial advisors. So other women were coming to me to coach them on what I had done, consult them on their business, etc. And that was my first clients at the Vixen Gathering. But what I noticed was so many of them needed a more solid foundation. I think this was when I was in Darren Hardy's mastermind. He talked about if your foundation is cracked, you cannot grow and scale. And so that is 100% true in business. And what I realized was a lot of my clients were the foundation of their business, the foundation of their home. Often they're the foundation of their communities because they're so involved. And they wanted to give. And what it was doing is leaving them a cracked foundation, right? They weren't spending the time taking care of themselves, growing themselves, pouring into themselves. And I like to say if you give with a cup half full, it's not as powerful as giving from a full cup. So what I wanted to figure out is what is a process? What are some steps in coaching that I can run all these beautiful women through that came to me so that we can solidify their foundation? And so that's how the Vixen Mastermind was born and my 90-day program that we run now. So again, you can do the 90-day program one-on-one in small groups or in the mastermind. But the point is, it's 5 pillars to solidify your foundation as a human being, as a beautiful, multifaceted female on this earth, right? We are different. And I also feel that women are the future of the earth. So for me, this is a very spiritual process. But, what I'd love to do over the next few weeks, tune in. I'm going to be going through these 5 pillars. So again, if you work with us at the Vixen Gathering, this is what you do for the first 90 days. And then we will get to scaling and building your business. Because 1, you're going to make more money. 2, you're going to enjoy it more. And 3, you're just going to have more joy, love, and peace in your life if you solidify this foundation before you scale. I think all of us entrepreneurs have, and if you're listening and you're not an entrepreneur, by the way, the same tenets hold. I'll never forget when my best friend became a mother and I owned 2 businesses and I was not a mother and she was not a business owner. Our lives became very eerily similar because we had to prioritize. She had to prioritize for her family and juggling everything. I had to prioritize juggling my business and putting my team and clients first, right? So what I love is if you're tuning in and you're not a business owner or entrepreneur, we can be inspired by the things that, other women go through. We can find our story in their story. That's why it's so important to me to interview so many women so that we can hear from different amazing journeys and get inspirations and hear their challenges and know we're not alone. So that's why these 5 pillars really work for any of you going through transition who feel like your foundation's cracked. I mean, I like to say none of us are perfect because I really think when we're perfect, we're dead and we've gone to heaven, right? I'm not ready for that yet. So I gave up my perfectionism a long time ago. But anyway, the 5 pillars, what I'd love to share with you. Number 1 is time, energy, and confidence management. So you can imagine at one point I owned 3 companies. I had to become what I call a time management vixen. I had to become exceptionally good at that. And one thing I noticed in my career is that the most successful people got up early. I am not a morning person. in school, my most effective time was from 10 p.m. to 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Yes. I like to wake up at 9, 10, 11. When I was a lawyer, I didn't have to be in the office till 9 or 10. That worked just fine with me. And so becoming a business owner, I discovered, and I think a lot of women discover this as mothers as well, I hear it often, that me getting up an hour or two earlier in the morning gave me that necessary time for myself and allowed me to go into my day solidified, calm, solid. So I had to train myself to become a morning person. Now, I'm not advocating that. I want you to do what's right for you. We all have different biorhythms. We work differently. But now I can't imagine not being a morning person. Like, I just fell in love with my time at the morning. Same thing when I had to become so regimented in my schedule. I'm not a routine person. Honestly, I'm probably more of a creative, artistic type person, which is crazy because I've been a corporate lawyer and a financial advisor. When I look back, I'm just like, what was I thinking? But there is a part of me that's very analytical, logical, likes things to go in a certain way. And so having the set schedule with calendar blocks and certain days that I did certain things, while at first I fought it, what I realized was it gave me so much freedom because in that moment, like right now I'm talking to you, I don't have another thing on my mind, right? The next hour, I might be working with my team to accomplish something, and I am totally 100% focused. So having that organized calendar gave me a peace. It gave me a presence that I didn't have before, and it really increased my focus. So, studies have been done that the average CEO focuses for like less than an hour a day. So when I was training with Darren Hardy and under his mentorship and multiple programs, what he teaches is if you can have a 90-minute jam session, you are going to slay your competition. If you can focus for 90 minutes straight on one thing, you're going to accomplish so much, right? And now I'm a certified coach under Brendan Bouchard for high performance coaching, and science shows that high performers take a break every 52 minutes. So you might have that hour and a half dedicated, okay, I'm going to, write this blog, I'm going to work on my book, I'm going to put together the system for my business, whatever you have to. But I'd encourage you to take a break after 52 minutes, reset and refresh, and you'll be better for the rest of the time, right? So there's so much that time plays into. It's really important that we understand time and how we operate best. That's why the first pillar is time management, energy management, because I think all of this is managing your energy, but there's also some other tools we can generate energy, right? So we'll be talking about that. And the third is confidence management. I mean, really, how can you show up and serve someone else if you don't feel great about yourself? I just think confidence management is so critical to our everyday life, especially if you own a business, lead a team, lead your family, lead anyone. That confidence and really just for having a joyful life too. It's super important. So that's the first pillar. Our second pillar is having personal core values. Now, many of you probably have core values for your company. If you don't, hang on for pillar number 5. But, having personal core values really reminds you what's important to you as a human being, as a woman, as a mother, as a business owner. Like, take those roles out and let's get back to your humanity and your purpose here on earth, right? And so I did this exercise in 2020 as I was creating and envisioning the Vixen Gathering. And my core values were affection, alignment, and adventure. And it's so funny because I posted on LinkedIn, I think last year, and this woman I knew from college, and we weren't great friends. We knew each other. We were sorority sisters. But anyway, she wrote, wow, this is exactly who you were in college. So here it is, 25 years later, I'm posting, and I just don't think your core values change. Does that make sense? And I've just seen the miracles that have happened with my clients when they define and own their personal core values, how it helps them make better decisions, how it helps them to love themselves more, how it helps them to manage their time better. There's just so many benefits to having your personal core values. So that's pillar number 2 and this kind of 90-day Vixen foundational program. Pillar number 3 is owning your worth. And I love this. Of course, we're going to talk about money during this pillar, but for me, it's very spiritual. Because I believe we are God's greatest creations. And if we don't love ourselves and give ourselves our own worth, that's kind of like spitting in God's face. And so we all have moments where we don't own our worth, right? It's a constant journey. It's a constant battle. But in owning your worth, we're going to work on your limiting beliefs about money. We're going to work on building your abundance mentality. We're going to figure out what really you would need to live the life of your dreams for you and your family. And then we're going to figure out what's in the way and how we can do it better. And there's an in number. I do not tell anyone unless they're a client going through it, because the surprise element is part of it working, right? That you're going to walk away with, that's your guiding North Star. So unfortunately, when I do the episode on owning your worth, I won't give you that last piece of the puzzle, but we will do some pretty powerful exercises that's really going to help you. So pillar number 3 is owning your worth. And a good part of that is what's your hourly rate, right? And again, tune in. You can just search for the episode on owning your worth and dig into that one. And so you can figure out how to calculate your hourly rate and how it can help you make better decisions and say no easier. Which leads me to number 4. Number 4 is setting graceful boundaries and enhancing your self-love. And the reason I say graceful is some women are excellent at setting boundaries. I know that's shocking to the 90-something% of us that are not excellent at setting boundaries. I can share with you, I have been coached on boundary setting since October of 2019. So, I'm just a little ahead of you and doing the work if you haven't done the work, right? And so I love talking about setting graceful boundaries, because a graceful boundary is you set the boundary and you don't feel bad about it afterwards. You actually feel good about it. So women have come to me and said, oh, I'm good. I'm good at having difficult conversations. I'm good at setting boundaries. When we went through this pillar, they were like, wow, I learned so much. I could do this better. So again, none of us are perfect. We're not going to be perfect until we're dead and go to wherever that great place is. I'm not in a hurry to get there, but we sure can fine tune setting graceful boundaries. And then the other part of that is enhancing your self-love. So I think that setting boundaries is so important to loving yourself. And I know I already feel that many of you are listening and you're like shrinking up, like, ooh, self-love? Am I allowed to do that? Yes, it's critical. And self-care is so talked about and so out there, but self-care is a means of getting to self-love. And an important part of self-love is loving yourself and forgiving others. So again, if that's something that you're like, wow, I need to hear about that, just look for the episode on self-love. And the 5th pillar is setting a compelling vision for the future. So again, if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, this is the first step in our business strategy in building and scaling that business. If you are not an entrepreneur, what it is a compelling vision for something that's important to you in your life, right? Something you want to change. We're going to set a purpose. We're going to set who you need on your team to do this. We're going to set what's your big, hairy, audacious goal. And then we're going to set your core values for this business, this purpose, this dream. What are the core values? What's important to that? Now, this is different from your personal core values. And by the way, if you're married and have a family, if you have a significant other, a life partner, I really encourage you, have core values together as well. Each have your own. Have your together core values and have your family core values too. That's super powerful. So in future episodes, we'll be talking about that as well. So that is our final pillar of Vixen. And in the upcoming weeks, we are going to break each of those pillars down. So, you can go to YouTube, you can search and find the episode that you're interested in, wherever you listen to us on Apple, Spotify. You can also get the episode there. And what I would love is these episodes are going to be coaching when it's just me. I would love for you to go to that YouTube channel. We'll have the full episode there so that you can leave your comments, your ahas. because I very much believe in the ripple effect. The reason I share my stories is in hopes that you hear something you relate to so that you have a huge aha, you're inspired, you go do something different, and your life improves. Or you don't beat yourself up so much about a mistake you've made, right? And so as you have these moments going through, because you're basically getting digital coaching for free on this podcast, which I absolutely love because our goal is to change as many women's lives as possible. So what we ask is that you pay it forward. When you have that aha moment, when you have that self-critical moment that you correct, when you set that big dream, that big goal, in that episode notes on YouTube, share it with us because that way other women can be inspired by your story as well. And always reach out to us on Vixen Gathering on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. You can DM and share your stories. Who knows? You might be our next guest. So anyway, I very much look forward to this journey with you together. I hope that you got value from today. I would love to hear from you. Please let us know. What would you like to hear more of? What did you love about today's episode? And what is your big goal right now? Have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.